Like, there's other parts of the city. Maybe our neighborhoods need to be fixed. Our roads, they are prioritizing these more or less pet projects and special interests. The government's job, only job, is to serve and protect the people. Okay, we're being protected for the most part, but are we being served? Now, I don't think we are, because when we have utility lines with lead and copper and all these outdated materials that haven't been maintained, replaced, or serviced in over 40, 50 years, decades, but we're focusing on repaving, spending millions on new roads, lanes that are too close to the point where big trucks have to turn in their mirrors, unnecessary signage for street markers in downtown Panama City. The rest of the city's falling apart. You know, the whole purpose is to serve. You're taxing the people, and you're not serving them. It's funny because if we go back a few hundred years, there was something called, what was it, no taxation without representation, and it's like, how are you still repeating that same mistake hundreds of years later?
Vote for Demetrius Reese for Panama City Commissioner, Ward 4, on or before April 22nd. Super Tuesday is right around the corner. Super Tuesday is coming up, and the big elections. I've been really focused, haven't I, on the Panama City election, almost to the point that I pretty much have completely neglected talking about Lynn Haven, because Super Tuesday, you guys are voting as well. So figured we'd fix that by bringing on the most popular mayor in Bay County history, of course, Mayor Margo Anderson. And I've got all kinds of copies of her book with me. We'll talk about that a little bit, but I'm also eager to talk to her about the importance of the Lynn Haven election. But before I bring her on, let's let a few more people join us. And if you want to notify folks, let them know we're getting started. We sure are. I don't know how long we'll be here, an hour, a couple days. I don't know. Never know. But before I bring her on, I want to remind you of the importance of, everybody says it, transparency. But what is that really? I'll tell you one thing it is. It's forcing things to happen in front of the residents and the voters at the meetings, rather than having quick meetings where everybody seems to know their own roles. And one of the best things over the past 2 years in Panama City, don't you think, is that Mayor Doc Rowan has shined a light, pulled up a stool, say, everybody, we're going to be here a while, pack a lunch. We might take 2 or 3 breaks. But one thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about stuff. And he is up for re-election. And here he is.
When we partner with them, they will get the fund. They will get the slip rents. They will get everything probably for 60 years. So that is income that we in the city won't get. We'll still, either way we go, we're going to have a marina. I don't think there's any doubt about that. The question is, who's going to get the funds from the marina? And if we have the funds ourselves, I think that then we could start reducing the fire tax.
Vote for Doc Rowan for Panama City Mayor on or before April 22nd. All right, let's bring her on. Here she is, Mayor Margo Anderson. I don't know why in the world we haven't done this before, but I think we should do this every night.
That would be an interesting conversation.
Well, welcome to the show. How's it feel?
It feels great to be on your show. I appreciate you inviting me, and this is an exciting week for Lynn Haven and for Panama City. Municipal elections are quite different in many ways than the November elections, because they're at such a different time of year and people don't generally come out in as large of numbers. But looking at the issues facing my hometown of Lynn Haven, I hope this will be a huge turnout. I really do. And I urge everyone to vote.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe early voting is now until Friday. And then, of course, the weekend, no, Monday, no, and Super Tuesday is where it's at. Let's talk about that in a minute. Right over your head is the 600-page book. And it is full of things you don't find in books like this. It is because most people don't get the FBI investigation notes or things that the grand jury heard. How's the book sales going? And what was it like writing the book? Was it cathartic? Did it give you relief to finally get it out? I mean, how'd you feel about it?
Well, the book was a process. I started writing it before I even knew it was going to be a book. I was just writing down everything that happened. It was a way of keeping my sanity through the 35 months that I was on pretrial release through this federal investigation. I can't describe what that was like in a few words, so that's why it's 600 pages long. But the book itself did help a lot. And if you remember, I did not release the book until November of 2024. And there was a reason for that, because I was still under federal supervision until August of 2024. And so chose not to release the book until then. The first week that it was released, it became the #1 best-selling true crime book on Amazon, which was a huge surprise for me because it is a nonfiction book. And I hope many people will read it. I was looking at sales. There were 16 of those books sold in the last couple of days on Amazon worldwide. I don't know who bought it, but just thinking about, just randomly people are reading it. And my prayer for that book, and I believe that this is what is going to happen, the right person, the right podcaster, the right news anchor, the right congressman, someone that God has planned, in my opinion, is going to read that book and it's going to get a national platform. And it's not because it's well written. The book is written the same way it happened. Quite frankly, sometimes the book is raw, sometimes it's emotional, sometimes it's just facts, sometimes it's documents. There's one whole chapter about the death of my rescue dog. I mean, just things that happened during this horrendous 35 months. And I think when this right person gets it, and that it will be known everywhere, and it needs to be known not because my story is so important, but because what happened to me is so important. It's so important that this does not ever happen to anyone else again who is serving in elected office.
There's another person that just an hour ago or so released his own very short documentary. He was arrested. His name is Brandon Straka, and he led the walk away movement. And he was a journalist who was arrested and he had to plead and all that stuff. And he is talking about how the FBI set him up, framed him, lied to him. And I'm thinking, geez, in just less than an hour, I'm going to have Margo Anderson, who, I mean, God bless that guy and his story. It's horrific. Yes. But not even Donald Trump was persecuted as much as you were. For people who don't know, you were hit on August 19?
Yep.
August 19, 2020, and charged with 64 counts of public corruption. And as you sat in a cell, shackled with iron shackles that bruised your arms and ankles for hours and hours until the afternoon, you didn't know what the charges were until they had the big press conference where the state attorney and Sheriff Ford and everybody went up and promised to clean this town up from public corruption. And at the time, I didn't know you were the whistleblower. And I didn't know what was to come. I just knew 64 counts. And they have like a 98% conviction rate if you count the pleas. That's not good odds for you. And I wrote about this in your book. You asked me to write a chapter, and I wrote 22 pages, the prologue. And basically, that whole prologue is about, I thought you did it. We knew each other. I liked you, but I thought you probably did it. Some of it, because I was assured that you did. And turns out, after I looked at it deeply for about a year, you didn't do any of it. And all 64 charges were dropped. If they'd convicted you and gotten everything they wanted, you would have been sentenced to 1,050 years in prison. Nobody has, not even Donald Trump, was hit like this. It's unbelievable.
I was listening, Bernie, 2 nights ago to the guy that they have arrested for firebombing, a terrorist firebombing Elon Musk's Tesla dealership. And even he's facing possibly 40 years. in prison, 40 for firebombing.
Wow.
He's a terrorist. And so the point of that, what they did with those 64 charges was to make it a national news story, which it was. It was on the front page of the Washington Post. It was all over Florida. Lynn Haven mayor steals, they use the word steals, $5 million in FEMA funds. And no one's ever retracted any of that. There's been no apology. And their sing-song little mantra is she's a convicted felon. She pled guilty.
They love saying that.
And I pled guilty because they told me if I didn't, after 3 years of fighting Bernie, they told me if I did not plead guilty, that as soon as you go ahead and go to trial in 2 weeks with James Finch, and if you're acquitted, even if you're acquitted, when you walk out, we're going to charge you again. And this time, if we even get one count against you, and they had plenty that they were going to bring back, and you can roll the dice twice, 2 juries. And if you lose, we're going to get you for 188 months. And if you add that up, that's 12 years and you're 68 years old. I chose not to gamble the rest of my life.
But it's important people know what you pled to because any of that, as a matter of fact, the charges didn't even allege that you stole $5 million.
No.
It's just unbelievable what they did to you. But
and the main thing
when you say you pled guilty, Margo, I just want any new viewer to understand that you didn't plead guilty to any of that stuff. Will you explain what it was?
Well, and the thing to remember is it's been put out there. Well, they dropped the 64 charges because you pled guilty. No, they had already dropped all those charges before we were going to trial. And the last charge that James Finch and I were going to trial on was conspiracy of bribery. And the bribery charge was the no quid pro, that new little, a wink and a nod. And it's not even allowed. If it were today, they could not have even charged us with that. So I pled guilty to a non-existent, charge basically. And actually, they told me that I made a false statement to the FBI agent, the same FBI agent who made a false statement to the grand jury to indict me, but they called his a misstatement. He made a mistake. Mine was a felony charge. It was, did you meet Mickey White in October of 2018, or did you meet him like you're saying in December or January of 2018, 2019? I told the truth. I know exactly when I met him and under what circumstances. And they said I lied, and so it became a lie.
Yeah.
And that's how it rolled out. But I, anyone can read the book and anyone can ask me questions. I'm very open about answering any questions. I have sent a copy of this book with letters to every single member of the Congressional Judiciary Committee and asked to testify before them and offered to take a polygraph before I testify. I doubt there's another official involved in this case in any shape, form, or fashion, from Sheriff Ford to Ricky Ramey to Vicki Gaynor to Chris Forehand. None of them would take a polygraph. Was Margo Anderson the whistleblower? Did you know she was innocent? Did you accuse her of something she didn't do? I'd love to see that.
I remember reading through the sheriff's, I believe it was the sheriff's investigation notes, and you were called the whistleblower for a while, or I don't remember the details about it, but it's just crazy. Sarah Moon has put a link to buy the book right there.
That's nice.
So that's in the comments, if a link straight to how you can buy the book. Now here's somebody, Jody, who is one of the two who are great citizen journalists, the Beacon of Bay County. They went and watched all of the hearings and the trials and did fantastic reporting. I mean, when this started, I don't think you knew who they were.
No.
How do you feel about the Beacon of Bay County after all of that?
I have become quite good friends with them over the last couple of years. I did know who Jody Moore was, and I had seen Jerry Parker Gap in the meetings, but I did not know them socially. They'd come to a commission meeting occasionally and, have comments to make and sometimes just attended. So I had seen them, but I did not know them. But they have been such great advocates. They came and actually, after they came to one of the hearings, they invited me to lunch, and they were still asking me questions, and they still weren't sure. And I told them I would answer any questions they had that I could answer. There were things at that point in time that we weren't allowed to talk about because the prosecutors had things sealed. And so I never spoke out of, anything I wasn't supposed to say, but I told them everything that I could.
And they you changed their life as well, because they weren't doing journalism until this happened to you. It was just sort of an organic thing. And the main thing you just described was their curiosity, right?
Yes.
They wanted to know. And so they were asking questions. And in my prologue, I start off with a quote, because in any investigation, whether it's journalism or law enforcement, I think of J.K. Rowling, the author, and she said, "There's nothing like looking if you want to find something.
If you want to find it, you have to look, don't you?"
And you must have felt like, the hell's going on around here? Why is nobody looking? And the answer was because they didn't want to find it. They actually did find it. They just lied about it.
And one of the interesting things about the investigation is after I went to share forward with what I had found accidentally, he nor any of his investigators ever questioned me. They had absolutely no curiosity. They questioned my neighbors. They questioned the employees. They questioned the other commissioners. No one ever came to ask me anything because they didn't want to know. And that's one of the things that, at some point I'd love to just look eye to eye and say, why didn't you want to know? And I have one other thing I'd really like to say, and then I'd like to go to something positive, because I think everyone's pretty familiar with my story. But I remember after the day in court when they had exposed, and he had admitted on the stand, on the witness stand, Jimmy Stanford, Major Jimmy Stanford, that he's the lead investigator in this thing. And he admits that he's accepted gifts from Derwin White, the payment of a funeral, a motorcycle, and he was accused by others of accepting much more, which he denied. But he did admit to those two things. And actually, he came back the second day to admit to something because he had said he didn't accept it before. And then under oath in a federal court, he made a untrue statement. And again, because he was law enforcement, they called that a mistake. For me, it became a felony. That night, after all that blew up in court, the news media asked Tommy Ford for a statement, Sheriff Ford. And Sheriff Ford told the media that he could not respond about Major Jimmy Stanford because he was under a court order not to speak. Well, it was in Judge Mark Walker's court. There was no court order issued on anybody not to speak from him. So I want to know what court prevented Tommy Ford from making a statement about his lead investigator. That's a question I'd like to know the answer to.
Yeah, I got a feeling.
I'd really like to know that.
Yeah, I got a feeling we're not going to get to that one. Let me do this. Let me remind everybody about Super Tuesday, and we'll come back and we'll talk about the importance of this election as it pertains to your city, Lynn Haven. But before we go there, I want one more time to remind everybody about you got a chance to vote Josh Street out. You got a real conservative, super educated guy, somebody I couldn't be more impressed with. And his name is Demetrius
We
Reese.
need to stop wasteful spending. We can see examples of that with the Chestnut property deal that was just passed several weeks ago. Again, as Mayor Rohan had already mentioned, properties worth $800,000. We paid well over $1 million for it. That's just wasteful spending at the taxpayer's dime. In addition to that, I think improvement in transparency and community engagement is paramount.
Vote for Demetrius Reese for Panama City Commissioner, Ward 4, on or before April 22nd. Also, the guy who sat with me yesterday, Margo, I didn't have all this fancy stuff hooked up yesterday. I could imagine you and I sitting over there chatting. I think we would have had just as much fun, but I'm glad everything's rolling. And Ed Young wants to bring fiscal sanity and accountability.
We have 3 city managers in Panama City. The first one, the chief one, makes $175,000 a year, and each assistant makes $125,000 a year, about $500,000 in one office alone. We have 714 employees in the city. We got 5 division heads. I've been in Air Force flights, wings, and commands. I've been in platoons in law enforcement. These numbers make no sense to me.
Vote for Ed Young for Panama City Commissioner, Ward 1, on or before April 22nd. So there are 5, you call them commissioners in Lynn Haven, city commissioners. Well, there's 4 and then the mayor. And how many of them are up for reelection? Is it 2 of them?
There are only 2, and the seat that is currently held by Judy Vandegrift, because I understand she's not running again, and then the seat that Jamie Warwick holds. So the mayor and Commissioner Perno and Commissioner Peebles are not up for election this time. So they're just the 2 seats. And I have no reservations whatsoever. I really wanted to speak about Judy Tender this evening, just a little bit about her. She and I served together on the commission. I was elected in 2015, which is now 10 years ago when I was first elected mayor. That's how much time has passed. And Judy Tender was elected in 2017. And as she came on the commission, it's sort of the same scenario, because when I was elected in 2015, Walter Kelly had been mayor for 17 years. And I ran for mayor because there were things in the city that were disturbing to me. And I kept going to commission meetings. And finally, Mr. Kelly hit the gavel. I was complaining about some things in my neighborhood. And he said, if you think you could do a better job, why don't you run for mayor? And I said, okay, I will. And so I did. And the city employees were not happy because of the things that I had campaigned on. I said the police department was letting things go in the city, as far as there was a drug house across the street from where I live, just those kinds of things. I also talked about the cleanup, the stormwater, the ditches. I made some comments about public works. The public works department was unhappy with me. So the first thing that one of the employees told me when I was elected was, we'll make it through 4 years of you, and then we'll be here and you'll be gone. And it was sort of like the Lynn Haven swamp. And the people didn't feel that way. The community room was filled with 200 people at the meetings. And so the things that I had campaigned on, I was one voice against 4. The 4 who were there were entrenched in the Walter Kelly. They were his friends, and they were loyal to him. And there were a lot of 4-0, 4-1 votes there for a long time. So a lot of people asked me later how I was able to get the things done that I had campaigned on. And the way that happened is because I would get on social media and tell people, I'm going to see if we can't get these golf carts passed for Lynn Haven like you asked for. I'm going to see if we can't get the meeting changed to 6 o'clock instead of 9 o'clock in the morning like you asked for. I'm going to see if we can't get a Christmas parade for Lynn Haven, like I told you. I'm going to try to, do that. And people would show up, 200 of them in the room, and I would let each one of them speak. I was the chairperson of the meeting, and they would come up and they would speak, and the rest of the commission would just shrink down in their chairs as the audience said, "This is what we want." And so then they were so. What is the word? I guess they just were so resilient and didn't want to vote that way. And so a lot of times they didn't. But in 2017, Judy Tender was elected, and 2 of the commissioners were voted out. Judy Tender came in, and Dan Russell came in. And Judy began to speak with me. And so many times it was just Judy and I who were asking for the things that we knew the people wanted, but even having 2 voices to speak. So where I'm going with that is I believe that Jamie Warwick and Judy Tender together would be stronger than just Jamie Warwick. I know what Judy Tender will do. I've seen her do it. She will speak out. She will represent what the people want.
She called for an audit. She was the first person to call for a fiscal audit, right?
Absolutely, she was. And she was also the first person to know about the $5 million that was missing, because the night before I went to Tommy Ford, I walked my dog around the corner to her house, and I called her on the phone and asked her to come outside. This was something we were not going to be voting on. And believe it or not, you can talk to another commissioner about anything you want to talk about, as long as it's not something that could possibly come up for a vote. And then if it does, and you've talked about it, you need to recuse yourself. But this would never come up for a vote, I'm sure. But I told Judy, I said, there are 6 checks written for almost $5 million that I had no idea were written. And I want to show them to you, because I don't think you don't know they've been written either. And I'm going to the sheriff tomorrow, and I'm terrified. I don't know who's responsible. I don't know who in the city's involved. I don't know who it is. So I'm going to the sheriff to ask for help. And I want you to know about it in case something happens to me. That's how frightened I was. So that's how much I trusted Judy. And she knew. that
Yeah. And I watched her testify in your case. I saw the way she was attacked, and it's pretty clear that the two of you were doing what the people wanted. And I talked about this a little bit yesterday when I had Ed Young on. So many times in local government, I see elected officials representing their donor class or the big contractors or whoever it is that has access to something they want. And not enough do we see people who actually represent the residents. You're elected to represent the people. So everybody can't leave their house at the same day, at the same time, and go decide how the government's going to run. So we elect somebody to do it for us.
That's
And
right.
Judy did that. As a matter of fact, Judy Tinder is running again because I spent a bunch of time with her, and she said the people need a voice, and she's got a terrific idea. She believes there ought to be a resident hotline. As a matter of fact, check this out. This is Judy Tinder.
When you're 75, 80, 90, we have a lot of seniors in Lynn Haven. It would be such a huge help to know that there's a number, a hotline we could call. If the water started backing up and we panicked and we live alone, we don't know what to do. If we had a number to call and say, look, water's shooting out of the thing out front and we don't know what to do and whatnot. And if they worked it, they would look this lady up, they would look up her water, they could tell everything about her system and everything, and they could help her or him. We have a lot of seniors that live alone, and I think we owe that to our residents. They've been around so long. And not that we don't owe the young people too, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying when you have a family of 5 versus a senior of 1, it gives their own family a lot of peace of mind to know, hey, call the hotline, Mom.
Some things are more important than politics, like integrity, like a commissioner with a conscience. Vote for Judy Tinder for Lynn Haven City Commissioner, seat 4, on or before April 22nd. It must have felt pretty good sitting with her representing the people.
Judy is a remarkable human being, and she has not only a conscience, but she has a good heart. And there is a reason why Lynn Haven needs a strong voice, somebody who's not going to just rubber stamp what's coming before the commission. And I don't know how much time we have. I just a couple of items that I wanted to bring up to people that they may not know about. In 2017, Bay County passed the half-cent sales tax referendum, and each city would receive this sales tax depending on the size of the city. And Lynn Haven is the second largest city in Bay County. So they projected at that time that Lynn Haven would receive $17 to $22 million in this surtax fund over the course of 10 years. And of course, 2027 will be the sunsetting of that tax. So we've been getting those funds in Lynn Haven for about 8 years. So one of the things that I did that I'm particularly proud of, you can watch the meeting, but in January of 2017, I asked the commission, I said, I've been listening, I've gone to the county commission meetings because I've been I didn't know a whole lot about a half-cent surtax. I was trying to learn. And so I recognized that now that this has been passed, every city is going to be probably starting to do some projects immediately, in advance of getting this money. So I suggested to our commission that we borrow against what we knew was going to come in. And my initial suggestion was $10 million, and they wouldn't go for that. I think we went for 3.4. And then later on in the year, it was going so well, we went ahead and went for 6 whatever it was. It all added up to 10 million over the year. So the logic behind that was, instead of just fixing one street here and one street there, we could launch a huge project on what we called our C and D roads, the worst roads in Lynn Haven, and put new pipes underneath them, repave them, and do a massive paving project we could get done in a couple of years. And Lynn Haven had terrible roads at that time. Of course, we have terrible roads again now after the storm. But this massive project took place, and Phoenix Construction got the contract. and they paved 25 miles. There's 100 miles of roads, so they paved 25 miles of roads in less than a year and put new pipes underneath them. It was a fantastic project. But the caveat behind that is for us to borrow that $10 million against the money that would be coming in. We voted as a commission that every cent of the money would first of all be spent on nothing but paving and pipes, and that each month when the money came in, whatever amount it was, if it was 100,000, if it was 50,000, whatever came into that account, we would sweep that account and that money would go directly toward the 10 million. So in my estimation, that bond should be long paid for by now. And so recently I sent a records request because now I'm actually allowed to communicate with the city of Lynn Haven again. For almost 4 years, I was not allowed to go to a city commission meeting. I was not allowed to communicate with staff or elected officials. I could watch it online and just get high blood pressure listening to it, knowing what they were saying, and many times was false. But anyway, I sent a public records request and I asked, how much money have we received at this point of that 17 to 22 million? I just love to know the total.
When did you send this public record request?
It's been about 9 months ago now. And they offered to send it to me, but it was going to be almost $300 to find out 3 questions. And I refused to pay it.
Yeah.
So I've even emailed them and asked them, I've asked each commissioner up there, I've asked them to find this out for me. No one will communicate with me. No one, not city manager, not mayor, no commissioners.
What about Commissioner Jamie Warwick?
I have not heard from him on it.
That's
nope.
It's unacceptable.
So
unacceptable.
So here we go.
I mean, I'm sorry, Margo. That bothers me. I know he's the better choice. I know I'm supposed to try to help out, but damn, Jamie, that pisses me off.
If I were in Lynn Haven right now and I was choosing between Bashir's, who I know is going to go with the flow.
Oh yeah, that guy's
based on what I don't know him personally, just based on what I've heard him say in meetings online, etc. I would vote for Jamie Warwick, but I've been very disappointed on many occasions with his, and I don't want to use an unfeminine word here, but his lack of the two things he needs sometimes.
I got it. That really. I know.
But back to my 3 questions, because Lynn Haven citizens, they need to ask this question. How much of that 17 to 22 million did the city get? Right. No one will tell me that. Number 2, have you paid off the 10 million like you promised you did? I know they spent $1 million of it on a fire truck that was not supposed to be. What? And then the third question that I wanted to know is, I think I'll leave the third question out for right now. Okay.
Fair enough. You got me.
But those are very important questions. How much have we received? And did you pay off the bond like we promised that we would? Okay, so that's one of the things. The next thing is, what happened to the Lynn Haven Library? That library was supposed to be part of the rebuild. The city received, I was told, $11 million in insurance. I wasn't there, when all of it was completed. I know from Vicki Gaynor said this, and some others said this. The first $1 million that came in was put into the general fund from the insurance, and Michael White blew through it, paying ECS those checks. That's what I found out after the fact. But other people knew it was happening, but they didn't come to the commission. Yeah. So why didn't they tell? But that library should have been rebuilt. We had the money. And so that's it. And they shouldn't be having to answer a question on a referendum. Are you agreeing to pay higher taxes if we have a library? That library is part of Lynn Haven's oldest legacy, and it should not have been left out of the rebuild. Which brings me to the large city hall that was built. That building was not the only option that Lynn Haven had. And the week before I was so unceremoniously removed from my hometown, there was a big brouhaha at the last commission meeting that I was at, because I had found out Vicki Gaynor had written without authorization $100,000 to Florida architects just for a presentation. They had no contract with the city, and she'd written $60,000 to Dewberry, all these. She had already committed Lynn Haven with these checks without commission authorization. When I brought this up in the meeting, Adam Albritton defended her and said that the commission had authorized with her to negotiate a contract. And I said, negotiating a contract is not writing a check for their presentation. They're giving a presentation for the commission to decide if they're going to get a contract. So what I saw was Vicki Gaynor following down the same path that Michael White had done, writing checks like it was his own checkbook. And I called her out. I was shouted down. There were many people at that meeting that should not have been. Arthur Cullen, several other activists were there. And what could have been in Lynn Haven, what could have been, instead of that Taj Mahal on 9th Street, James Finch had asked me, could he do a proposal after he found out that they were looking at $43 million to build that monstrosity was the first figure. Now they took it down quite a bit after that was exposed. But James brought a drawing to me and showed it to me. And he said, I've just acquired the property behind Walgreens on the corner of the two biggest roads, 77 and 390. And I'll sell it to the city if they're interested. I've got a proposal. And I said, well, you can't just come in and say, I'm going to do this. You can do a proposal and let the commission consider it. And so that's what he asked to do. And I want to go back to some things with Jamie Warwick and some of the others when the mayor told them that they couldn't put anything on the commission agenda. Any commissioner or the mayor has a right to add anything to an agenda they want to. That's the only way you can discuss it with other commissioners. You can't, you're not supposed to discuss it outside of the meeting. So if there's a proposal that a citizen, a contractor, a builder, someone who brings to you and you think it's good and you'd like for the other commissioners to see it, that's how you do it. You put it on the agenda. So when James told me he had 5 acres of prime property that he was willing to sell to the city, not like he had to sell it to the city. He was going to, I'm sure, offer some kind of wonderful deal like he has before. And then he showed me a drawing of a sheriff's something similar to the sheriff's department for the Lynn Haven Police Department. His thought was to do a design for the police department, build it at a much cheaper price than what they were doing. And it would be on that corner with 5 acres. They would have access to both major roads, exit, egress. There would be room for plenty of parking for them. There would be room for an EOC. There would be room later for public works to expand there. It was a win-win for the city. But Vicki Gaynor, the city manager, had already committed us by writing those checks. And so they had to defend that. And so they made something evil out of James Finch's presentation. But the commission voted 3-2 to go ahead and put out RFPs, requests for proposals, to see if there were contractors who would be interested in doing something different, a design build for just the police department, to see if we could do it more cost effectively. And one of the things that I believe that James said in that meeting was that if another contractor were to win the proposal, that he would still be interested in selling the property to that contractor if they wanted to do it that way. So there were so many different options offered to the city that were thrown out the window.
And Margo, will you explain, because context matters now. This is right after Hurricane Michael, right? This is when things were torn apart and we're looking to rebuild in a good and positive way. I mean, this is what we're talking about, right? Was this time frame?
The time frame, actually, we started talking about rebuild probably a few months after, not really until maybe the first of 2019. But this concept came out much later. Like, we started having workshops in the summer of 2019. And at that point, I had already been to Tommy Ford about the Michael White debacle. So these workshops that were taking place in the summer of 2019, there were already activists coming to the meetings trying to take away from my credibility. And they were very, this is even when Commissioner Dan Russell at one of the meetings came after me, accusing me of the property cleanup. And I mean, there were so many things that were going on in those meetings.
It was like a staged propaganda attack on your.
They absolutely were. But I wanted to stay with, Judy was one of the people who voted to consider the design build. And then Pat Perno did the same thing. And after that meeting, there's testimony. Adam Albritton went up and asked Pat Perno, Commissioner Perno, why did you vote that way? And Pat Perno later said that he was confused, that he didn't know what he was voting on, or he wouldn't have voted for that. So once they had me removed, that was the last meeting actually. And once they had me removed on August the 19th of 2020, somehow or other, that whole design build concept just went away, and they went with Florida architects and they built what they have now. And my question was, what if we had some kind of major emergency in Lynn Haven and someone caught all the police on the second floor of that building at one time and blocked the egress to that building? Where would they go? How would they help people? I mean, it's just so ludicrous that they built it the way they did, just to keep from following, anything that I would bring up. So Judy would be a strong voice. She wasn't afraid to vote for something that would have been better for the city, even though the city attorney and the city manager and some of the others were, coming down and saying that this was something shady. Brandon Aldridge, who was a commissioner at that time, actually made a false statement to the entire commission and told them that FEMA would not reimburse design build construction. And that was proven a false statement in the evidentiary hearing. So there were so many terrible things going on. And I say that not to rehash terrible things, but to point out that Judy was strong and she spoke for what was right during that time. And also in the last few months, I will say that Jamie Warwick has spoken out when the others did not. I wish he had spoken out louder, and I wish he'd held his ground better, but he did better than the others. Yeah. And I think that he's the better choice. And I believe that he'll be reelected. And I hope that when he is going forward, I hope that he'll stand up. And it really bothers me that for some reason this commission thinks that they work for the mayor and the city manager.
Yeah.
This commission needs to know that I personally, after what happened to me and in the last months that I was the mayor, a strong mayor government to me is a better form of government than a city manager form of government, because the people have the person. They can elect the person and they can recall the person. They cannot reelect them. A city manager, once you have a city manager in place, it's very difficult to get rid of them, because your board is going to change and it takes a majority of that board to vote them out.
Yeah.
And the city manager that Lynn Haven has right now is the common denominator for multiple lawsuits. Yeah. And I'll just say it out loud, including mine. Mine's not the only one, but it's coming. And, I don't know what the result of it will be, but it's not out of being vindictive.
When you say it's coming, you mean the depositions, the discovery, because it's already filed, I believe.
It's been filed, the letter of the complaint, and it's been filed. And then the city and the sheriff's department both filed their own motions to dismiss. And like all lawsuits, it takes a long time. So now we have to do an amended complaint. It'll be a process. Yeah. But unless it's thrown out somewhere along the way, I don't know what will happen. But if it goes forward and all the evidence is allowed to be presented in court, I have the evidence of what they did.
Yeah. Wow.
And what they said.
Let's take a quick break. And when we get back, I've got several other questions, and we'll see if anybody else does too. And maybe we'll get a chance to answer some of those right after this.
Hand caught in the cookie jar? Sometimes bad habits continue even into adulthood. I'm El Saline, 850-215-0628. Let me help you.
Don't let back pain and neck pain get you down. Find relief at Brown Chiropractic Center on St. Andrews Boulevard in Panama City. Dr. Sherry Brown helps people heal naturally with chiropractic adjustments and deep tissue massage. Call 769-3777. You want to look good? You want to feel good? Little John's Big and Tall is where it's at. Right across the street from Sky's Pizza Pie, 5700 North Davis Highway. You can find out more online at littlejohnsbigandtall.com. He's also a member of the iTex trading community, where your iTex dollars are welcome. So, Margo, I'm still blown away that this is the first time we've really done this. I just don't know why we haven't done it earlier. What's on your heart right now? I know you well enough to sometimes just kind of listen more than I do.
Well, there's a couple of things, and these are just kind of hurt feelings kind of things. Like recently, when they dedicated the new City Hall, even though I think it's overbuilt and overspent, and the $400,000 kitchen, that still just blows me away. The fact that there's the gymnasium, and not that that's a bad thing to have, but the $400,000 kitchen should have been built in an EOC that's at ground level, so that if we had another hurricane, that it could be used to serve the residents of the city who don't have food or kitchens, instead of the police department on the second floor in a closed environment. So that still bothers me. But when they had the dedication, I watched it online. I watched, and I saw Ricky Ramey and Tommy Ford sitting together at this dedication. And I saw other commissioners who had served before that were invited. I didn't get invited. And, because I'm a convicted felon, I didn't get invited to the new City Hall. I should have been invited. I was with Lynn Haven during the worst days of the city. My family was part of Lynn Haven 30 years after it was founded. 5 generations, and it was so hurtful. And I bought one of the stones. And by the way, that was my idea, that people could buy stones with their names on them to commemorate the day. And I bought a stone and put I've never gone to the courtyard to look at the stone, because, and I'm going, the next time I come to Lynn Haven, I'm going to go and look at the courtyard, because I've been too intimidated. I won't use the word afraid, but I was too intimidated to walk down to the courtyard and walk around and find my name, because part of the federal supervision says that if you have any contact with law enforcement, that your probation can be revoked. And I had, you cannot trust Police Chief Ricky Ramey. I'm just going to say that out loud. And whoever comes in as a commissioner, they need to work to have him removed, and they need to stand up to do it. I don't say that with any hatred toward him. I don't hate him at all, but he is untrustworthy. He's unworthy to be the leader of the best police department in Bay County. He's totally unworthy. He lied about me. He wore a wire for almost 6 weeks trying to get one little statement that could help them to convict me of something, and there was nothing that he got that could be used. He's totally untrustworthy. And whoever is going to be on that commission needs to stand up to that. But where I was going with that is, I would not go to that courtyard to even look at the stone that I bought to commemorate October the 10th of 2018, because I was so afraid that he might come down and confront me and then use that against me. That's how terrified I was. No one should be afraid of law enforcement. I respect law enforcement probably more than anyone you can imagine. I respect what they do. I honor what they do. But those of the law enforcement who use their power, and the corrupt ones, when they use their power to hurt innocent people, it's unforgivable, it's cruel, and it really needs to stop. But Lynn, and I wanted to say this so many times when I hear Vicki Gaynor, the Mayor Nelson, who I've met one time. I ran into him somewhere at lunch and he spoke to me. But all those who just keep saying, we've got to move forward. We've got to forget all this. It can't be forgotten until it's made right.
That's right.
It cannot be forgotten until it's made right. And Lynn Haven, I believe, will not move forward until it is. Which brings me one more point I wanted to talk about. This sewer plant that the county is trying to get Lynn Haven to partner with. I want Lynn Haven citizens to look at that closely, because I think that many people in Lynn Haven think that maybe the old sewer plant's going to be closed down there on Kensall Park, and that this new and improved sewer plant up on Highway 77 is going to take all this away from Lynn Haven. When I was mayor, the county tried to get us to partner then. And the reason they want us to is because they need all those people up in Southport to hook up. They need all that to make it work. And I want, just think about this as a commissioner. Do you want to go up and knock on all those rural doors in Southport and tell people you're going to have to get off your septic system and hook up to this Bay County sewer plant in order to make it work, and pay these taxes and this, water and all this? Lynn Haven will still be used to treat the water. All the county's wanting is for Lynn Haven to pump all that water up north so that they can get that thing operational. It is not a good deal for Lynn Haven. It is not the way Lynn Haven residents need to really do some research on that. That's all I'm going to say about that.
All right. I got a couple things for you. When you were wrongly indicted and falsely arrested, I know how much it hurt you because we've talked a lot since it all happened. And the governor, who you had so much respect for and still want to, Ron DeSantis. I see other mayors, New York, I see all kinds of elected officials getting arrested or something. And usually the government says, well, there's no conviction. We're not going to jump the gun. We're going to let the process play out. How did Governor Ron DeSantis treat you?
That is an interesting question, Bernie. How did he know in advance it was coming? Because he immediately suspended me from office. And if you look at his letter, anyone can look it up online. Just
executive order,
the Ron DeSantis letter. I was immediately suspended and not able to. In other words, if I had wanted to leave after being arrested and come back to Lynn Haven and call an emergency commission meeting and sit down and lay out some evidence and say, wait, I am not resigning. I'm not leaving. I can prove to you that this is false. And I'm going to stay mayor until this is over. No one's proven anything. There's been no due process. Ron DeSantis took that away from me. He immediately took that away from me. And if you look and just think about it, when that affidavit came out accusing Bill Husfeld of property cleanup and Joel Schubert, the county assistant manager of property cleanup and some other things in charge to FEMA, they all immediately went on TV and were given press time by WMBB. And, I didn't do it. And just by saying I didn't do it, guess what? They're still in their jobs, or they were.
Yeah.
There's a web of people who are knit together in this. And as I look at what's happening right now, if I could quickly rehash. So Ron DeSantis removed me from office. Larry Keefe, who was the U.S. attorney who prosecuted me and stood on the stage and called me a virus of corruption with Sheriff Ford. His nickname is Clarice Starling. He had a secret email in which he used Clarice Starling. He discussed state contract language with his former legal client, Bertall Systems,
it was big,
for over $1 million for this migrant flight to Martha's Vineyard. And then a few months later, in October of 2023, he quietly resigned from his czar position that Ron DeSantis had appointed him to and went to work on Ron DeSantis's presidential campaign. Then when the campaign failed, now he's got another state job that Ron DeSantis has appointed him to. And not only Larry Keefe, who prosecuted me, but Jared Moskowitz, who was the state disaster emergency management person for FEMA. I wanted to hit on that. A lot of people right now are talking about the $27 million that Bay County's been asked to pay back to FEMA. You have to think about this. There's a circle of process stops where the FEMA reimbursement has to go through, about 13 different offices. And the final office that reimbursement comes back to, I learned this as mayor, is the state of Florida in Tallahassee. So Jared Moskowitz was the person in charge of how much money came to Bay County. He was the final stop. Okay, not Washington, D.C., wow. Jared Moskowitz. So Jared Moskowitz, by the way, who is a Democrat, was appointed by Ron DeSantis just 3 weeks after Ron DeSantis was elected. And Ron DeSantis was elected 3 weeks after Hurricane Michael. So you tell me why the Republican governor appointed Jared Moskowitz as the emergency managed director of Florida, knowing he's a Democrat. Well, maybe this is the reason. Jared Moskowitz had been the general legal counsel for Ash Britt National Haulers, the national hauler who's named in the federal indictment, who, according to this indictment, gave kickbacks to GAC, owned by Derwin White, and Alan Bentz, the former Speaker of the House. It is a web that looks like a giant spider.
I want to say one more thing about Ashbrook. Ashbrook is Jared Moskowitz is now a congressman.
But before he became congressman, Ron DeSantis appointed him to fill a seat after he left emergency management. By the way, he left quickly right before James Finch was indicted.
Yeah.
He was then appointed to county commissioner of Broward County by Ron DeSantis. And then he ran successfully for Congress. And now he's on the congressional committee trying to dismantle FEMA so it won't be investigated in Florida. You cannot make that up.
And there's so much more that I don't want to cross people's eyes by going into the latest stuff. And we'll do that at another time. I think we need to. The latest story that's happening.
The hypocrisy is palpable.
It's crazy.
Palpable.
But Ashbrook, according to Sheriff Tommy Ford and the FBI and the documents and what I was told at the time, Ashbrook is a national emergency consulting company that comes in, hires GAC contractors, Derwin White, is accused of kicking back more than $15 million to Derwin White in 2020, 2021, this time frame, 2019. Does Sheriff Tommy Ford go and the FBI, do they go after Ashbrook? No. You know what happens with Ashbrook? They get their name on the Children's Advocacy Center. Look at the very top. While they were being called more corrupt than New Jersey and New Orleans, they were, Sheriff Tommy Ford at the very time was the treasurer of the Gulf Coast Children's Advocacy Center. And they never got prosecuted, never got indicted, never got arrested. And get a load of this, Margo. The owner of Ashbrook died unexpectedly in December. It's effing crazy. All right. I got to breathe. This is unbelievable. We should, this shouldn't be the last time we do this, I think.
This testimony should be before the Congressional Judiciary Committee.
Yes, because it's all factual. It's all factual. We have nothing that we just said is a guess. And I'll guess sometimes. But these are just statements. These are just data point facts.
Well, two things that I guess maybe a couple of the final things that I would like to add. I know we're probably running out of time.
Oh, no, that's
is
fine.
The story that is broken right now. I only know what I'm reading about it, but what I have the most angst about is the story about Ron DeSantis right now and the Hope 501c3 and the $10 million that has broken. Again, the people who are explaining this away or trying to explain it away, they use words like, we made a mistake in not filing the taxes. We made a misstatement. You know, why with some of these officials is no matter what happens, it's a misstatement or a mistake. But a small town municipal mayor who stumbles on the tip of the iceberg, which would open, and it did, my case opened all of this up for no accord, because after they raided GAC and had all the boxes of evidence, all those boxes of evidence have been sealed and packed away and no one knows what's in them. I can guess what's in them, but no one has seen them and knows what's in them. And it needs to be exposed so that this doesn't continue to happen. But we've talked about a lot. But for those people who are running for municipal candidates, for Judy Tender, who is my, I hope that Judy and I hope that Jamie are both successful and there'll be two strong voices, at least on the Lynn Haven Commission. And the mayor has behaved so badly, has broken so many protocols and has treated citizens so terribly that it would qualify, in my opinion, for some of the reasons for recall. And I hope that after this election is over, that maybe that would happen, and that Lynn Haven could get a commission that would work for what needs to happen in the city.
I really hope so too. I want to remind everybody, Super Tuesday is when you get to vote for everybody. And I am especially pulling for this person.
The most important part of our city is our people. It's our residents. They make the city. we are there to represent them.
Vote for Judy Tinder for Lynn Haven City Commissioner, seat 4, on or before April 22nd. And I know you are too.
I wish that I could vote for her, but I wanted to end on a positive note if we're getting close to the end and talk about being the mayor of Lynn Haven was the greatest honor of my life. And I'm not sorry that I did it, even with all that happened, because I know that the 20 days after the storm, that I was the person that God had picked out to be the leader for the city of Lynn Haven. And he knew that I would care for the people, and I did. So those 20 days, I always look at the book of Esther in the Bible for such a time as this. I think I was the person for such a time as this. And I still think that all of this will come about, and it will all come out into the open, and there will be a bright day ahead for Bay County. And there's no place on earth I love more. It's my hometown, but I don't feel comfortable to be there anymore. I don't feel safe there anymore. I don't feel it's a place that I can live. But I want to encourage everyone who wins this election, whoever you are, if you win these offices, make sure that you attend the League of Cities ethics classes. You are required by Florida statute to take those classes every year. And I bet if you did a public records request, you're going to find a whole bunch of officials who haven't done it in a long time. And no one checks on that unless you do as the residents.
Yeah, and take it seriously.
But there are things that if you make a misstep, you can end up in a lot of hot water. You don't even have to do anything wrong. You can just have somebody who doesn't like you, who says you do something wrong. I forgot when I was running for mayor, I forgot to put paid political advertisement on the outside of an envelope. I put it on the letter, but I forgot to put it on the envelope. And my opponent's brother turned that into the ethics commission. It cost me almost $4,000 to defend myself on that with a lawyer.
It's required to go on the outside of the envelope?
Yes, you have to put it on every piece. And they found me not guilty of anything. They said it was just a simple mistake, but it took a year to clear it up and $4,000 for a lawyer. And so make sure that you go to those. And I wanted to end by saying some of the positive things that I feel that I did for Lynn Haven and for those people who might not know me. I'm the reason you can drive a golf cart around Lynn Haven. I'm the reason that there's handicap access for golf carts on the Bailey Bridge. I am the reason why there used to be an evening commission meeting. We had the meetings at night. I'm the reason why you have a Lynn Haven Christmas parade, why you have 2 splash pads. Well, one of them's been taken away now, but there were 2, the splash pads. I was elected to the Board of Mayors by the League of Cities and represented the whole area of several counties of Northwest Florida. I was very proud of that. Of course, that was taken away as well when I was removed. And on a personal note, I was Teacher of the Year in Bay County 3 times. I gave sacrificially to charities time and money above a teacher's salary.
I bump into people who talk about you as a teacher all the time.
Loved being a teacher. But the thing that I feel the best about is after the hurricane, started a hurricane relief fund. And you need to know what happened about this. Holland and Knight, a legal firm, did almost $100,000 of pro bono work and helped to get this hurricane relief fund going quickly. And I'm the person who wrote the letters. I'm the person who visited I'm not trying to pin medals. I just want you to know that no one's ever said this and they never will. So I'm going to say it. I raised $250,000 and it was all given in $1,000 grants to people in Lynn Haven who had turned in applications. My goal was for all 1,500 and I think 60 people who applied to get that $1,000. But the fundraising stopped because WMBB published a story in October of 2019. Florida Blue donated $50,000 to the fund after they saw what I had done, and I had talked to them, and they donated $50,000. WMBB published a story. They went on the news and they couched it by saying that we were giving out this $50,000 and $1,000 grants. And then they said how much had been raised previously. And the story insinuated that the other money had not been given out yet. And people started saying, well, where's the rest of the money? Where's the other 200,000? And it became this fight online. And so it lost credibility. but there is documentation to prove that every dollar,
WMBB
went to the families. And then to cap it off, while I was not able to speak or attend a meeting, Vicki Gaynor brought before the commission on the agenda that she wanted the Hurricane Relief Fund abolished because it was too much work on the city to file the taxes. And the way it was set up, the Hurricane Relief Fund could have been converted to an arts fund, a library fund, a sports fund, a scholarship fund, and it could have gone into perpetuity, like when people were shopping on Amazon to donate to it. It was still raising money. But because it was Mayor Margo's idea, the bitter city employees canceled it, and the commission voted to abolish it. There was about $4,000 left in it, and they gave that money to the next 4 families on the list, as it was supposed to have been done, and now it's gone. And it could have been raising money for your library right now. You need voices on the commission to get hold of these employees. I don't have a vendetta against Vicki Gaynor, but Vicki Gaynor was one of the people who made false statements to have me indicted. And
I watched her under oath do it in the court.
She's not trustworthy, and neither is Police Chief Ricky Ramey. And don't get me started on Panhandle Engineering's Chris Forehand, who is still making millions of dollars off taxpayers in Bay County, and he is a criminal who was given immunity.
For that, he got $1 million for this boondoggle that is not even that they can't even use. I want to say something, Margo, about you from your book right here. It's the end of my prologue, the 22 pages, where I explain how I went from thinking that you did some of those 64 counts against you to knowing for sure that you didn't do any of them. And I listed in here, why I came to that conclusion. And it surprised me, and it was dangerous, and it still has repercussions, but it was the truth. And the truth is beautiful. And I after 22 pages, here's how I ended the prologue. I said, Margo's book takes you on a journey of legal treachery that will shock the conscience of every American. Through it all, she personifies the faith and strength of Genesis 50:20. Quote, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good in order to bring about a day like this to save many people, end quote. That's where I ended up after all the research. And it's crazy. I hope you get the book and even if you just skim through it every now and then, you will not believe it. Anyway, Margo, I want to leave you with a chance to say whatever you want to say. And again, don't feel like we can't do this again. We can do this a lot.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, Bernie, and it's always good to talk with you. I'm forever grateful to you for looking for the truth and for telling the truth when you found it. And I'm forever grateful. And I have to bring up James Finch as well, because I truly believe that James was indicted because he stepped up to pay attorney's fees for me to keep me from having to have a public defender. If it had not been for him, I would have had a public defender, and I'm sure that I would not be speaking to you tonight. I would still be somewhere else. So James Finch is an honest person. I'll jokingly say that he's not corrupt because he doesn't need anything. He has more money than Lynn Haven. He doesn't need anything that Lynn Haven has. And he's a great human being. And I thank him, from the bottom of my heart. We've been friends since I was a child, since I was 5 years old. I've known him a long time. But I guess the main thing that I would like to end with is that we have congressmen that represent us. I was going to run for Congressman Neil Dunn's seat. I think he's a nice person, but I think he's very ineffective as a congressman, and I wanted to run for his seat. I'll never run for political office again now, but that was my aspiration, and that was known. It was known at the time that I was indicted. But I would like to reach out, if they're watching, Congressman Neil Dunn, to Congressman Jimmy Petronis, to Senator Ashley Moody, to Senator Rick Scott. You all know me. You all know who I am. You know what happened to me. Why don't you take a copy of my book and put it in the hands of your colleagues and get me that hearing in front of the Judiciary Committee so that I can talk
about U.S. Attorney Pam Bondi?
And U.S. Attorney Pam Bondi. I've written letters to all the members, and you could help me get the hearing that I want. And the hearing is not for me. I would love to have a pardon because I'm innocent. I would love for President Trump to hear my story. All of you could help me get the story to him. He knows me. He walked in the streets with me. I sang "God Bless America" to him in the middle of Michigan Avenue. But you could help me if you wanted to. And if you don't help me, I think it speaks volumes. I would like this story to be told because every defendant deserves to see their grand jury transcripts. They don't have, I believe in the sanctity of the grand jury, that they should be secret and people should not know who they are. But every defendant has the right to know what they've been charged with and what's been said about them. Because if we had not seen our grand jury transcript, James Finch and I would have gone to prison. Yeah. We needed to have that evidence to prove what happened. And there needs to be accountability for prosecutors who threaten people and take away your constitutional right to trial. When someone scares you out of your constitutional right to go to trial to prove your innocence by telling you that you're going to go to jail for the rest of your life, there's something wrong with that system. So I would like to have a hearing to talk about it. And I hope that my congressmen and my senators might hear my voice and help me. I was the sitting mayor who took a constitutional oath that I never broke, the same oath that they took. And I deserve that. I deserve that moment. I guess that would be all I have to say, Bernie.
Indeed. All right, Margo, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Bernie. Thank you for everyone who's listening. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have you back.
Thank
you. All right. Wow. Yeah, there's so much I wish I could share, even with what she just said, but I've got to learn when it's time to call it. So I just want to say thank you right now to the Unknown Patriot, for sure, for your support and helping me do this, and to all of you who throw a tip in the tip jar. As little as $5 a month at patreon.com/Bernie Thompson. As little as $5 a month. Best $5 you can spend on the internet. And it's easy, it's anonymous, and you can quit at any time. And if you've been wanting to get my undivided attention, I'm sorry, but this is a surefire way to do it. By going to calendly.com/Bernie Thompson. It is very, very easy. Very, very easy to book a call. And I have to take those because you pay me to take those. And I'm behind. Should I do this? Oh my God, I'll do it. I'm looking at my cell phone. I'm going to tell you so you don't. I was about to say just so you don't hate me, but it's probably going to make you hate me more. Phone calls that I have missed 20. Text messages, I'm behind 68. And signal messages, I'm behind 82. Now, I'm behind not because I'm popular or anything like that, but because I'm either busy or lazy, trying to keep my sanity. So anyway, that's what I'm telling you. If you really want my undivided attention, that's the best way to do it. Calendly.com/Bernie Thompson. Okay, thank you for being with me, and I will see you again soon. I've got big plans for Monday, the day before Super Tuesday, the day before the election, and I will tell you about them as soon as I confirm it all. See you then.